Good morning and welcome to today's installment of our Transfer Playbook 2.0 series, where we're digging deep into each of the strategies. Today we're looking at strategy number 3, which is all about advising. I am not going to take up much time because hopefully you've been with us for the other two, so you kind of know what's going to happen here. But we have welcomed panelists from many of the institutions spotlighted on strategy 3 in the playbook. And today we're going to have a real panel style conversation about this advising strategy. This session, I don't mind telling you, had the most registrants of all 3. So I know that advising is a hot topic for folks all across the country. I'm eager to learn from these folks' expertise. So just a quick reminder, this is a Zoom meeting, so we can see you, and towards the end of the call, we've reserved some time for QA. We'd love for you to come off camera and come off mute if you'd like to interact with the panelists. Otherwise, the chat is open. Please feel free to engage with each other and us there. If you have a question for the panelists or our moderator today, please use the QA box. You can access that at the bottom of your screen. You may have to click those 3 buttons, the more button to find QA. But you're welcome to put your questions there, and we will either answer them in real time by typing, or we'll save them to answer at the end. And it's helpful too if you have a specific person in mind you want to respond to that. Just do the little @ symbol in that person to capture their attention. But without further ado, I'm very pleased to welcome once again our moderator for today's session and one of the lead authors of the Revised Transfer Playbook, Dr. Tanya LaViolet. So if you'd like to come on, Tanya, let's get started. Thank you again for joining us, everyone.
And thank you so much, Emily and NISTS, for hosting us and our panelists. We are both excited that we have reached the end of our Transfer Playbook webinar series with NISTS, but also a little sad that the 4-part series is now coming to a close. I am just going to go over our opening spiel of how we arrived at the playbook findings. For those of you who are new, maybe some of this data and information will be a little bit familiar. For those of you who have joined us for the past 3 or so webinars, you'll be able to recite these slides alongside me now. So why don't we dive in? So just a few key data points that really undergird the qualitative research that we did from from the Transfer Playbook. You all know this through and through. Survey after survey nationally, it shows that 80% of entering community colleges aspire or are interested in attaining a bachelor's degree. Unfortunately, when we look 6 years out, there's a major gulf between student aspirations and outcomes, and only 16% of those entering students graduate with a bachelor's degree from a 4-year institution. And if we move on to the next slide, what Tracking Transfer, the publication that CCRC and Aspen put out in February 2024 showed for the very first time was that when we look at those data, not only are transfer outcomes too low, there are also disparities for historically underserved student groups, in particular when you look at these other bars for Black, Hispanic, Native American, low income, and adult students. And so again, 33% overall, but then you can see the disparities for other student groups when we look at both the transfer rates and the bachelor's attainment or bachelor's completion rate and the compound bachelor's attainment rate for all community college students. 16% overall, as I mentioned before, but only 9% for Black students, 11% for low-income students, and 6% for adult students. So again, a lot of room to improve both the overall outcomes and for particular student groups. Now, while this data that we've showed here is very sobering, some hope was also present in the data. If we move on to the next slide, there's a lot of variation in outcomes when we look at the institutional level. And so what you see on this very nerdy data slide is that every single dot on here is a community college. The red dots are the median for the state. And what the right side of the dot shows you are the community colleges, and by extension, their 4-year partners that are achieving above the median, above the average outcomes overall. And we see this also for particular student groups. So these colleges on that right side of the red dot show what is possible in terms of outcomes. And that's really the foundation of the Transfer Playbook methodology. If we move to the next slide, we were looking at those schools that and partnerships that have achieved strong outcomes overall and strong outcomes for historically underserved groups, in particular Black, Hispanic, and lower income students. And so we identified those partnerships with those strong outcomes. We did screening calls to understand which ones had strong practices that help support those strong outcomes, intentional practices, I should add. And then we went into the field. We did in-person site visits at 11 different campuses and additional virtual site visits at other campuses. And those site visits and those virtual site visits are what's captured in the Transfer Playbook. And I would be remiss if I did not thank the team who was responsible for that 64-page tome that is the Transfer Playbook second edition. As you can see here, there's a lot of work, a lot of people power that went into the Transfer Playbook, but there was also a lot of joy learning from the experts in the field, those who are doing the work day to day, but also some fun times in between. Moving on to the key findings from the Transfer Playbook. So after doing all of that qualitative research, all of those interviews, nearly 200 hours of qualitative interviews, this is where we landed. 3 concrete strategies: prioritizing transfer at the executive level to achieve sustainable success at scale, aligning program pathways and high quality instruction to promote timely bachelor's completion within a major, and tailored transfer advising and non-academic supports to foster trust and engagement. And today's webinar is focused on that 3rd strategy. Within each strategy, if we move on to the next slide, please. Within each strategy, we have 3 essential practices. And for the advising and non-academic supports, the 3 essential practices are early, sustained, and inevitable advising systems. And what that means is that if you're a community college student or a 4-year student, is that when you enter your college, you are going to speak with an advisor to get support through your transfer journey, and not have to raise your hand in order to find that support. Engaging transfer students before, during, and after they transition to a university, starting outreach and advising in high school. If we move on to the next slide, essential practice 2, in order to support that early, sustained, and inevitable advising, what we found is that these exemplars had a trained, knowledgeable, and caring advising corps. And that wasn't just left up to chance. They put into practice concrete systems like hiring and training to encourage advisor empathy for transfer students, that there was mandatory and routine professional development for advisors, and there were strong advising protocols that really started with the end in mind, students' career goals that backed into the transfer pathways. And again, professional development made sure that every advisor was knowledgeable and equipped with the tools that they needed to support students as best they could. And then finally, essential practice 3, a transfer-specific approach to holistic success. So there's the academic advising piece, but as you all know, community college students and students in general have so much more to their lives, so many more dimensions than just college itself. And so the exemplars that we interviewed had a really holistic approach to student success. Many of them had quick on-ramps to career advising and high-impact experiences in both community college and university, knowing that those kinds of experiences were essential to getting the most out of their higher education. Activities that foster community building, belonging, and inclusion that are informed by the transfer student demographics and needs. So making sure that, again, it's not just about the academics, that students have a connection to the places where they are studying and have community that can support them throughout their studies. And then finally, attention to transfer students' basic and non-academic needs. Students gotta eat. Students have to have a place to live in order to do well and focus on their studies. And these schools did a really great job of connecting those non-academic needs to support a strong academic experience and outcomes. All right, without further ado, now I'm going to introduce our panelists to really make this framework come to life. So we'll take the slides down, and you will have plenty of time to ask questions of the panelists when we are complete with the panel. So are our panelists spotlighted? All set? Okay. All right. So what I am going to do to keep us on time is I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, their institution, and give one fact about their institution to help the audience better understand your institution's unique context. And I'll ask for the Prince George's Community College team if only one of your representatives can provide that fact, just to keep us on time. I'm going to start with President Amy Bosley from Northwest Vista Community College, and then I'm going to kind of work down the line of our panelists. So Amy, on to you.
All right, good morning, everybody. It's really nice to see you, and thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us today to talk about such an important topic. I'm Amy Bosley. I serve as the president at Northwest Vista College, which is one of the 5 independently accredited colleges in the Alamo Colleges district. We are in San Antonio, Texas. We serve 20,000 students, and of those, 80% have an intention of transferring.
Thank you. Dr. Antoine Dees, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick off for your team, and then I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Sure. Good morning, Antoine Dees. I'm the program director for academic and career advising at Prince George's Community College. A few fun facts about the college is that our student population is very unique. We have about 62 students, 62% of students are Black students, and also about 95% of students are typically students of color, and about half our students receive Pell Grants from the college. And about 51% of students are more so students who are first generation college students. So it's very different in terms of our population for the college itself. And so I'm one of our team members. I also have people as well from Prince George Community College from our advising office and also transfer team as well to support me today.
And Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Orientation and Transition Programs at the University of North Texas. We are a Research One 4-year institution in Denton, Texas. Our enrollment, we have about 46,000 students on our campus, 34,000 of those being undergraduate students. Every fall semester, we welcome about 3,500 new transfer students to our institution, and about 2,000 new transfer students every spring semester. And 40% of our students at UNT are first generation students.
Thank you. Okay, so let's dive in to the panel. And one of the essential practices in the playbook was inevitable and early and sustained advising. So I'd love to hear from each of the panelists, and maybe we'll go in that order. Amy, Antoine, Stephanie, or Antoine, one of the reps from PGCC. How does your institution make transfer advising inevitable, early, and sustained for your students? And as you think about your response, share a challenge that you've had to overcome to achieve this inevitable advising. So Amy, why don't we start with you?
I'm happy to. So the Alamo Colleges district is known across the country for our Alamo Advise model. It is an assigned case-loaded model. So our advisors typically have a caseload of 1 to 300 students. And that is important because we have required advising touch points. So when you talk about sustainable and inevitable, we have a whole framework that makes it both of those things, right? It's sustained from an employee perspective, right? A capacity, a labor, and an experienced advisor perspective, but it's also required that students have an engagement with their advisor at 15, 30, and 45 semester credit hours. We also use a tool that's been built here at Alamo called Transfer Advising Guides. And so these are actual pathways that connect from Alamo College's degrees at each of our institutions to our transfer institution partners, so that we ensure that students are on a pathway that will get them into that next level program without excess credit hours. But managing those transfer advising guides really requires advising support. Because if a student changes one thing, right, they change the institution that they're headed to, or they change a class that they take, those can impact their transfer, and of course the credit hours that are accepted by the transfer institution. So we have 52 advisors, plus we also, the other component of that is that we have, every advisor has a peer advisor, a certified peer advisor that works with the employee advisor to ensure that the students are getting the level of support that they need, they're getting their questions answered, but also that they are staying on track to graduating as quickly as possible. You asked about one of our challenges. So anytime you put barriers between a student and completion, like a mandatory advisor check-in, you introduce a lot of complexity into your system. And so that is one of our challenges, is managing advisor capacity at peak times. It makes sense that you'd have a 300-person caseload, but when all of those 300 people need to register in a 3-week period, and they all decide that that's the time that they want to see their advisor, you can only imagine the capacity challenges that we face. And so that's something that we're constantly trying to work on in terms of advisor outreach, making it compelling for students to come in at earlier times during the semester. And then the last thing that we've done to start to overcome that is to introduce full academic year registration. So we now roll our full schedule a year at a time, and students can register for all 3 semesters at the beginning of the year. What this does, though, is it introduces a whole other set of challenges with required advising touch points. So we're navigating through that right now. It's not an easy fix, but certainly something that we know has made it possible for more of our students to be able to complete their programs.
Thanks, Amy. PGCC team, I'm gonna, because I know Stephanie's experiencing a little bit of internet issues. So while we have her, want to hear from her. Stephanie, turn it over to you. How does UNT make advising inevitable for the incoming transfer students? And if now is not a good time, we can turn it to the PGCC team and we'll come back to you. Okay, PGCC team, Antoine, who's taking this one?
Laura, can you, or from your side?
And the question was, how do we make advising inevitable? We do many of the same things that Amy just mentioned. We also have some benchmarks for 15, 30, 45 credits. All of our students are assigned an advisor when they enroll at the college. So they have to see somebody. And again, I sit in a different seat. I'm in partnership with my colleagues in student affairs. So I'm the liaison to all things on the academic affairs side from my seat. So I don't know if Emmett or Kyle want to add anything to that since they're in deep with managing the advisors. And I am a former faculty advisor, so I used to do a lot of advising myself.
And I can add to Laura's statement just for clarity, and I kind of put some context into the Q&A. So we are a guided pathways institution, which means that all of the programs are in particular majors or sets or what have you. So what happens is, as Dr. Dees mentioned, they're split between career and transfer pathways. So what happens is our advisors are also split as well, to make sure that they're focusing on specific career pathways, which lead directly into industry standards, and transfer, which means that the courses have been aligned to the 4-year colleges and universities. So hopefully they seamlessly transfer, which we'll get into later. Additionally to that, we have also gone through some restructuring. We're also part of Aspen. I'll briefly speak on that. So some of the things we're doing with our advising model is mitigating some of those challenges in reference to getting more student engagement and student focus, and therefore being more hands-on in reference to how we're being more intentional when we're advising our students.
Thanks, Kyle. And so really the combination, and I see that pattern too at Northwest Vista, the combination of kind of this guided pathways approach with really kind of advising touch points at mandatory or strongly suggested as communicated to students to get them onto a path and support them through that path. And then Stephanie, I see you're with us now at UNT. What does this look like? What does inevitable advising support look like for incoming transfers?
Definitely. And first of all, I apologize, everyone, if I'm in and out. We're having some connectivity challenges, so I apologize for the disruption. But with our advising processes at the University of North Texas, we have a required advising for all new undergraduate students, so first year students or transfer students, and that happens during the orientation process. So students come in and they know their first touch point and how they get registered for their first semester is through their orientation process. So we also have a comprehensive course sequencing map for all of our majors at UNT that we review with students to help with timely graduation. So that's a resource that students can find both during orientation, but also online as they're researching their opportunity to transfer here. Something that we do in addition to the general academic advising and those support processes is many of our degree granting colleges offer prospective student advising appointments. And those are often initiated after students are here for a campus visit, whether that be one of our transfer debuts, transfer experience days with admissions as they're exploring our university. But they can also reach out directly to those colleges and meet with them to understand how their courses will transfer, how they can review transcripts with them, what degrees we offer that are similar to what their interests are. So that's a service that many of our degree granting colleges offer to our students.
Thanks, Stephanie. So working through the framework now, I want to turn it over to Amy to discuss, what advisor training entails at Northwest Vista. What is the scale and how does it support your goals for transfer student success?
Right. So first, I just want to say, Stephanie, you have one of my treasured students who has successfully transferred from Vista to UNT, and she is thriving. And so I can validate what an amazing job you all do at receiving our students and taking such good care of them. So I'll send you her name later. You can check in on her.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, she's having a great time there. So at Alamo Colleges, we have certified trained advisors. We worked with the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, CALE, to build a certification model that every one of our advisors goes through on an annual basis. It's an actual 10-year advising plan. So each year they have different training, different milestones, different expectations. And all of our advisors, when they're hired, begin with the first 3-level certification program. It's about a 5-day certification program plus some online components that they complete on their own time or via Zoom and via mediated learning. This training program is really focused on foundations of holistic advising, mastering the advising practice, and then all of the technology tools that we would expect our advisors to be able to use in supporting their students. But we also get into all of those special populations that we have such privileges of serving, right? Our students, our veteran students and their families, our students with accessibility needs, our parenting students. Almost 20% of our students at Vista are parenting. And so I know our colleagues at Prince George's have a very similar makeup of students. And so providing the advising services to those special populations does require additional certification and training, and we provide that to all of our advisors. So we do this across the district. It's literally hundreds of advisors are hired and then trained and certified. And each year that the advisor recertifies, it's not an option. They must be a certified advisor as part of their job. But we also give them $1,000 stipend each year to acknowledge the certification and acknowledge their continued commitment to student success. It's really changed things here at Vista, and I've only been here 2 years, but as you dig in and you learn history, you learn a lot of the things that are that led to these decisions. And so I was recently meeting with our math faculty who 10 years ago, before this program was in place, built a math advising model that they run out of the math department. And so we were talking about like, why are we doing this? And help us understand what your goals are and how can we better support you? And what we found is that we had not connected the certified advising components and student success to what was happening in that specific academic department. And they were really excited, but also very surprised to learn that our advisors are trained every year on changes in practice and changes in technology and changes in transfer advising guides in completion requirement and catalog requirements. And so our advisors are very well prepared to support students across the curriculum. And so we're really proud of that model. It helps us both ensure that students are successful, but it also helps us attract and retain advisors, which is really critical, especially if you have an assigned advising model. It's one of the things that gives me a little heartburn. Whenever an advisor leaves, that's a student's person that is leaving. And it's a person we've told them they can count on by name. And so that retention of advisors is really critical, but it also provides a career pathway for advisors to continue to refine and upgrade their skills and level up in terms of expertise. So I see some questions in the chat. I'll do my best to answer those, Tanya, but if there are other questions, happy to help support that as well.
Great. And I think a lot of folks are asking to see the advising and training and certification process. And so maybe Nicole, we can follow up afterward and see what might be available to share with this group.
Find all of those things, make those available.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie first, and then to our friends at PGCC for the next question. I would love the perspective from both UNT and PGCC. How are your institutions supporting holistic success in terms of either non-academic needs or career success, for example?
That's a great question. So beginning with the orientation process, our students are introduced to some of the support services we offer specific to transfer students. We have a transfer center that is actually run through the orientation office that serves all of our incoming transfer students. And their work is truly to help make this big institution feel small and help students find their space and their community here. So our transfer center has transfer communities that we offer on a semesterly basis. Sometimes they're topical based by interest. Sometimes they're based by an initiative that we have going on campus. So we had one this past year related to building your brand and helping with becoming a professional as you're landing your first job. So they did things like getting headshots ready for the interview process. We worked with our print shop to get them business cards made. So there are specific services and things that we offered to them based on that interest. We also, in addition to the transfer communities, offer major and career exploration sessions for students. We partner with our advising services department, which oversees all of the advising colleges at our institution. And they often do more major exploration. We don't have an undecided major on our campus, but our advising services area kind of helps students find that place for them. But we've done many major mixers to help students kind of dispel that stigma that they can't come in undecided or they can't still be exploring even at a more advanced stage in their college career. In addition to that major exploration during orientation, to help with that stigma, we offer a parallel pathways session during the lunch hour for students that might go to their advising session and question if that really is the path for them, or realize that it might take them longer than what they thought to complete their degree and what would be the most efficient way for them to complete their time. So both of those services are offered through advising services, and we partner with them. But in addition, we have a large career focus on our campus. Career readiness is a large focus for all students. We have career coaches embedded in all of our colleges that work with students on resume review, finding internships, and they also host networking events and also major specific career fairs for students. So our students have a pretty intense career focus as they embark with us here at UNT.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I love this framing of making a big place like UNT feel smaller through the transfer center, because so many colleges and universities have these services, but there's not necessarily the connection for transfer students. And so I love that there's an intentional way to get transfer students connected to this career focus across the whole college. All right, Antoine, what is PGCC doing to support holistic success or non-academic needs and career success for students?
Sure, we have by pathway what's called early advising weeks. And so what happens is that by each pathway, students are able to meet with their advisor as well as the instructors in that pathway. Talk about transferring to a four-year school if that's their plan, one, or two, look at now what kind of job they can get with the credential. And so a lot of times they're coming in thinking that they want to go into one field, but they're learning more hands-on about, the jobs that so they can get with the credential itself. Because they may think that, this field is for me, but after talking to their colleagues, also their mentor as well, they're like, no, this is not necessarily for me, but I can do a different area and kind of learn more about it also. So early advisory is more so what we do on our side for one, but also using what Amy said as far as the benchmarks are concerned. At 30 credit hours, they can get a faculty mentor, but they can learn more about, their field of study and also learn more about, opportunities that lead towards success, either going to a four-year school transferring or again, the job market. Additionally, on the advising side, we have our biweekly advising sessions with our staff members. So they have to go through training every 2 weeks. And so this is more of a chance to learn about opportunities to to learn about transferring as far as state requirements are concerned, and also best practices for advising as well. And I'm gonna let Dr. Turman also chime in on this question also from our side.
And to contribute to Dr. D's statement, we would be remiss without mentioning our coast partners. So the holistic approach is points of entry. Oftentimes it's too late once they get to the community college to make a decision on certain majors. So the coast advisors, they're in the high schools throughout the county, and they help transition those students from K-12 to community college and then to the four-year component. Additionally, in reference to training, we also have affinity groups in the state of Maryland, which have been very advantageous. Therefore, every alignment within the higher education system. Specific to advising, we have two. We have advising, and we also have transfer and articulation. Many will say, what's the difference? Transfer and articulation more so focuses an emphasis on curricular alignment, transferability of courses, which is a little different, or actually drastically different than just advising. So what happens is that many people in the state, they're able to attend these sessions and get the information that they need to be successful at their institutions. The great thing about these affinity groups is that all of the community colleges work together. We're happy to have Ms. future Dr. Angela Rowe in the house, who also sits on the board with Dr. Emmett. And within these affinity groups, we make decisions for all of the community colleges in reference to the direction we're going to go, course alignment, and we tend to always be on the same page, which makes transfer and advising a lot more seamless.
Anything else to add on? I know this audience in particular is very interested in the holistic success and non-academic and supporting non-academic needs. How are you connecting kind of your advising processes or other support processes to ensure that students are accessing those non-academic supports, like, for example, food pantries, other social services, that kind of thing that supports their academic journeys?
Sure. We also have our market. This where they're able to come on campus and get food weekly if they would like to support their families or themselves as well. We also partner with our mental health center in terms of, if they're not successful themselves as a whole person, they can talk to a counselor about, what's happening. So therefore they can take care of themselves. We also do a lot of partnerships in the community with the bus passes or a train ticket. So therefore they're able to come to school if need be. So it kind of goes back to now, make sure that they're successful as a whole before coming to the school. Again, if they can't take care of themselves, then they're able to take that hat off, so to speak, and successful themselves in the classroom. We also look at making sure that they're able to talk to our transfer partners as well on campus. We have done MOUs to have people from different four-year schools in their physical office spaces. So they can, kind of release that barrier from there. They can come to PGCC and see an advisor at a four-year partner on campus. So therefore, they're able to limit that barrier per se in terms of having to now come from PGCC to the four-year school. So that things will be done differently for us, but kind of go to now looking at how can we support them as a whole in terms of career success. So at PGC we're different. we don't necessarily have a career center per se, but each advisor has career aspects of their job. So we can look at now talking about, career planning, resume reviews, and stuff like that. But there's a physical career center on campus. So we do a lot of partnerships with the community or our career internship department. So therefore, we refer to them as needed for career planning. But we still have to make sure that we understand that career advising is important for our students and look at now what kind of job they can get or the soft skills required for different areas. Laura?
And I'll add one more piece to it, to what you said. We are also beginning to build maps for all of our programs. So we already have the curriculum, right? The students need to know what courses to take. But we are going to include in these maps extracurricular, co-curricular activities, digital badges they can earn along the way, clubs they can belong to, careers to explore along the way. These are going to be holistic maps for their whole experience here. And that's just another project that we are embarking on that is really going to intersect with our involvement in the Aston, Maryland Transfer Intensive, something that we're doing with Moonshot EAB for social and economic mobility.
And can I add one last thing to Laura's point? How we all work together, because it is a holistic model. All of us in this room, we liaison between all of the departments. This is the only way we can get this work done. So Laura has trained us on curricular development and alignment. So we also sit in these seats so that when the curriculum is being developed, to make sure it's transferable, to make sure that we have the student feedback in reference to how we're operating. Because oftentimes prior to this arrangement, everyone's operating in silos, not knowing what the left hand is doing, and we are duplicating work and making processes harder instead of seamless. So we've been able to make this work by everyone communicating more effectively and sitting in each seat to have a voice and seat at the table.
And I think in the research for the transfer playbook, we saw this matrixed approach and kind of the organizational structure helped support holistic success for students by enabling that kind of sharing and coordination. And the other thing that we saw in the playbook was that that focus on holistic success appeared in your advisor training. So not only were advisors getting trained, for instance, on the pathways that you were developing and the articulation agreements, it was how to also support students through other aspects or dimensions of their lives that would impact their ability to fully engage in their academic studies. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up the panel component now with one final question because there is so much activity in the Q&A. People are hungry for your insights. So last question, and I'm going to start with Stephanie. And what's next in transfer advising or non-academic supports at your institution?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's specific to non-academic supports. We're constantly looking at ways that we can meet our students where they are and support our students as they're navigating what it's like to be a transfer student and then not wanting that label as, oh, I'm a transfer, but they're just a student. And so our transfer center is embarking on some new programs and working to enhance what we're doing with our Welcome Week programs for transfer students. For first time in college students, we have a required welcome week, but for transfer students, we have an optional experience for them, but we still offer small group meetings. We still offer mentoring for them. We still offer a way for them to participate in new student convocation. So we're focusing more on meetups for students, space, building community with them, but also as we talked about in one of the previous questions, helping them find their place here in the large institution through that transfer center. In terms of advising and in terms of our work with admissions and academic affairs, we're working to help with a focus more on seamless pathways for students, whether that's through the transfer process, so that students aren't hit with roadblocks as they're looking to transfer to our institution. How can we make this easier for them? We have partnerships with one of our neighboring community colleges with our Frisco campus on offering courses both at their community college and at our campus to help that seamless pathway for students. So we're continuously looking at creative ways that we can meet students where they are and kind of take some of that burden off of them.
Thanks, Stephanie. And quite literally meeting students where they are. Okay, we'll turn it to the PGCC team and then we'll wrap up with Amy. What's next?
Well, right now we are engaging in Aspen so that way we can continue to grow. However, we have a lot of state legislation that has come online that we are trying to make sure we're meeting those standards. But more importantly, we are really working on growing our partnerships. We recognize that we have a high touch student community and they do better with those colleges physically on our campuses. Once they have to engage them by going here and there and playing all of this rigmarole, they get lost in the sauce and often say, well, I'm just not going to transfer. So what happens is having these institutions and these partnerships are vital to their success. We are also doing completer programs. In Maryland, we have our regional higher education centers where students are able to indulge in these particular centers and complete their 4-year degree. So that means, say, for example, we have a partnership with Bowie State. They will be able to finish that business program at that particular center. So we're making sure that a lot of the things we're doing are aligning and making it as seamlessly possible for our students because we are in a different time where students aren't transferring at the rates that they are, and we're all fighting for retention and transfer among the state. So it's very important that, as I mentioned, all of us work together. We all have a common goal, and we make sure that we are engaging from K-12, community college, and 4-year to make sure that this happens. And also, I don't think we mentioned, we also have high schools that are on campus. So that means when they graduate, they will not only have their high school degree, they'll also have their community college degree. So that way we continue to work with them to make sure that they get that 4-year degree. But again, having those colleges and universities on our campus and making sure that our staff are trained, not only in transfer and career, giving our students the information that they need to make an informed decision has been vital in our success. So in conclusion of that, one of the things we're doing statewide, but more so specifically within Aspen, is making sure that these courses are transferable and the transparency part of that, because sometimes our students don't know what questions to ask. So we have to involve them in the process. That way, when they get to that point of transition, they can seamlessly do this.
Thank you.
Just to add, we're gonna likely for what's next have to make some curricular changes to some of our transfer programs. Because it's not the gen ed courses, the general education, we don't usually have a problem with them transferring, but when we get into the program level courses, that's where we really find ourselves negotiating with our university partners. And but we really have to take a look at our programs and see should some of those courses be offered at this level and at the next level. And so we're likely gonna have to engage in some curriculum change for our transfer programs.
Thanks, Laura. And I think you can have the strongest advising system in the world, but if the pathways aren't right for students, then you're advising them through, inefficient pathways. And so, and the other theme that's coming through for me here is that you too are meeting students where they are. And I think oftentimes when we talk about being place bound, we think about it in a rural context, but I've also witnessed it in the research in an urban and a suburban context. And still some of those same practices that you would think about in a rural context, bringing things to students rather than asking.
Apologies, everyone. The audio dipped out here for some reason. We're not sure what happened, so we'll keep going and just pick right back up as Amy is responding to Tanya's question.
About our smaller class sizes, the more intimate ways that we will know you, the academic learning supports. And so when we're trying to convince students to come to us They get here and then we're like, oh yeah, you should plan to go over there. And it's the place that we have just dissuaded them from going to because of all of these reasons. And we don't do anything to change our messaging. And so we've been thinking a lot about how do we help students see the university as the next place where they are going to be successful when we've just made a successful case that they shouldn't go there, that they should come to us, right? And so it's just kind of an interesting dilemma of thinking about what that messaging looks like. So what we're doing, a very specific pilot project that we're starting this fall here, is a peer mentoring program with our largest university transfer partner, which is University of Texas at San Antonio. So what we're going to do with UTSA is we're going to actually pay Northwest Vista students who have successfully transferred to UTSA to mentor students who are at Vista who need to get to UTSA. We think that peer mentoring is going to be a really important part because what they're looking for is, will I be known? Am I going to be lost? Are my classes going to be huge? All of the things that we've said, we need to correct that messaging and help them see that as a potential pathway. And we have so many students who have transferred to UTSA and are very successful. So many of them still work here. And so we're thinking about how we use our peer mentoring process and our peer advising process to strengthen that transfer pipeline and help students make that peer connection that when they get to the university, they've been there before, they know what they're going to see, they know that they've got a friend there. It's far less at that point about program, it's far less about anything other than these social constructs that we know that our students are really interested in. And this, I'll give you a specific example of when this happened and really started kind of coming into my mind. I was at Valencia College for 23 years before I came out to Texas. And we were having lunch with students one time, and this student, his name is Angel, and he said that he was going to University of Central Florida, which is my alma mater. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you so excited? Are you going to do Spirit Splash and the reflecting pond? And he had this look on his face, he was kind of terrified. And he said, I've never been there. And he was starting in 2 weeks and he was absolutely terrified. And I said, okay, let's figure that out. So he came over for breakfast one morning. I'm a mama, like, come over, I'll feed you. And I was like, come see my alma mater. I want you to see the school through the eyes of somebody who's been there. And we went out, my husband and I took him out to the campus, and he was like, well, where are these big auditoriums that I'm going to be in? Like, oh, as an upper division student, that's not what you're like, look in the classroom. This is where we walk to schedule, right? And like, look in the classrooms. This is where you're going to be having your experiences. So that just was such an eye opener for me of of how we need to pay particular attention to the social components of transfer and making sure that students have kind of confidence in where they're headed, and that they are going to fit into that campus just like they did here at Vista.
Thank you, Amy. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to the audience, and I'll go through the Q&As as well in the chat to see whether there's anything we want to elevate here. But this is your time, audience. Feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself with any questions that you have for our esteemed panelists. And when you unmute yourself, just please introduce yourself, where you're from, and then your question.
Hello, Charles Jackson from Michigan State University. Thank you, everyone, for your insights. I appreciate the information regarding the mentoring program for transfer students. We are in year 2 of our Tempo mentoring program at Michigan State University. It was actually grant funded. Unfortunately, that grant got pulled because of the executive orders, but we are looking to take over the mentoring program within our Transfer Student Success Center. But the mentoring program has been very beneficial for mentors and mentees. It gives an opportunity for those new transfer students to get assistance with navigating campus, thinking about different careers that they want to pursue. And then also it provides leadership skills for those mentors as well. So it's those high impact practice experiences that have been really essential to all of our transfer students. And I just appreciate just some of the insights on, the importance of developing and implementing a mentor program at your institution for transfer students.
Others, feel free to pipe in with questions. I see one, or at least a theme in the Q&A about, especially at small rural community colleges, but others as well, when you introduce mandatory advising, and Amy, you had alluded to this, that it can create some potential capacity constraints or some other challenges, but it is beneficial for students, at least in our studies. So any thoughts from the panel about how not to create barriers to registration, or at least to alleviate them when you do have mandatory advising?
Yeah, I'll offer just a couple of thoughts of things that we're trying here, but we don't have this figured out all the way. So like, I know none of us do. We're all practitioners and learners with you. So, you know, when I think any of us offer this feedback, it's done with a ton of humility of like, gosh, if we could figure it all out, it would be terrific. One of the things that we're doing is really working with our advisors to do much more proactive case management with faculty partners. So we know that we've decided that we're not going to have peak anymore. There is no peak. We're eliminating peak. We're not going to talk about peak anymore. That is something that we're creating for ourselves. So 60% of our enrollment every year is continuing students, but we act like it's 100% new students that are all going to be registering at the same time. And so we're really working with almost like a Gantt chart plan of when do advisors reach out to which students, and how do we partner them with classes that are happening on campus, so that a team of advisors can go in and be ready to advise those students kind of in real time in the classroom. It's a little bit of a gamble because we don't want to devalue what our employees are experiencing by saying there's no peak, right? There is a really intense time, but a lot of that is on us. We're manufacturing that by not proactively planning our advising and registration process with students who are already here. So I'll tell you just like what that looks like this summer. We have a goal of having 10,053 continuing students in the fall, but who's counting? That would be me. And I'm watching the daily registration reports, right? And I am able to do a gap analysis to say, if we continue on this pace, we're going to need to hit this many students per day to reach our goal. That isn't actually practical. And these are all students who are known to us. So we're backing up all of our advising, outreach, and registration process with continuing students to be complete by June 14th. So that at June 15th on, then we're in a place of really supporting those first time in college students, which is half of that number, but they require a lot more intensive advising, right? An intense connection. So again, it's really thinking about it from a process flow and a kind of a loading question, like when do we do which thing to avoid overloading at those peak times, and then really working us back out of something that is embedded in higher ed and it's been here forever, which is there's a crazy time of year and nobody can take a vacation and everybody has to be here doing the things. But that's a lot of that is on us. And I think that we can work our way out of that with some really intelligent scheduling and planning.
Thanks, Amy. And I'm going to turn it over to Leslie in a moment, but two other ideas that came from the transfer playbook research. And, you know, Stephanie, I think at UNT with your kind of group advising through orientation is one way to scale it, to make sure that incoming students do get that support in selecting their classes early on. And I think the other thing that we saw in community colleges was really leveraging that student success course. So through the Playbook research, but also through the Aspen Prize research, we found schools that make that student success course mandatory, and it's usually taught by advising staff. And then the output of that course is for every student to have a tailored education plan that is based on the transfer pathways that they've developed with their partnerships. So that is the way that the student gets the advising, not necessarily through those one-on-one appointments, but it still counts toward that mandatory advising touch point. And then for the students who are going through like the 15, 30 milestones, those are the students that really have the need that advisors are doing the outreach to. So again, balancing that group advising as well as the individual appointments. To the point of the people in the Q&A in the chat is that it can mandatory advising can put a strain on advisor capacity. Leslie, I see your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks for having me. The quick question for Stephanie, and I may have missed this, so my apologies if so. The career services that you provide to your students once they have transferred, is this really targeted towards your current students, or do you also work with prospective transfer students that have not transferred yet?
Career services would be enrolled students only. So we do prospective advising at the college level, but not career specific. So any of those services with resume review, that and our career coaches, that would be for enrolled students.
Okay, thank you.
We have 4 minutes left. Precious time with the panelists. If the audience has any further questions, I'm okay.
Good
Is it
morning. My name is
Elnisha?
Elnisha, yes. Thank you, everyone. Your feedback has been very insightful. Question is directed towards Dr. Toorman because you mentioned your advisors are divided up into career pathways and transfer pathways. I just want to be clear, when you say career pathway advisors, are they directing them towards like the vocational technical programs to go into the workforce? Is that where it's the same? Okay.
Yeah, so they're divided into, and actually I put into the question Q&A, we actually have care units. So advising SAPCAR specifically is broken down by career pathway, which still is aligned with engineering, business, but directly going into the industry. And then you have transfer, same way, but directly going to the 4-year. But including the care units, we do have a men's program. So they have a mentor from that particular advising office. And then we also have our co-advisor. It depends on what level the student's at, and the students also have that opportunity to sign up for those other additional advising services, such as veteran, upwards bound, regular veterans. So the care units really do help of all points of entry to make sure that our students are successful.
Thank you.
So I want to lift up a question in the chat about getting buy-in from community colleges to develop pathways, which is interesting. I've never heard the question asked in the other direction. So I want to turn it over to our community college friends for a quick lightning round, 30 seconds of response, and then we're going to close out.
I think we're in this wonderful place where you need us. And so we're anxious to partner because we know it's great for our students. I think helping see how you as a university partner can bring things to the table. We're very used to fighting upstream on this. So if you came to a community college with a clear pathway and accepted credits and guaranteed admission, like we're all over that and would love to partner with institutions that want to partner with us in that way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Emmett here from Prince George's Community College. I'll echo Amy, and I always say, come to us with 3 core principles as a 4-year college university. That first principle is supporting degree completion, making sure that you honor that. Secondly, not only transferring the credits, but making sure those credits are applicable and apply to a student's program. And 3, making sure that any agreement or pathway includes and the 4-year commits to non-academic support systems and structures.
And I'll add
Thank
one
you.
last thing to that. It is important to have the buy-in of the college presidents and provosts. Without that, you cannot move. So again, speaking for the state of Maryland, all of the presidents and provosts, they're meeting to make sure that we're all on one page, to make sure that these things are aligning. Prior to that, we weren't moving the way we were now, which was building a lot of barriers. So to see this engagement and moving forward in a different direction is really going to have all of our institutions be more successful.
Well, what a way to bring it home in full circle to our very first webinar, which was on executive leadership support. So thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you to all of you for joining us on this 4-part journey. It is not the end of our journey together. Please feel free to reach out with any questions you have about the playbook, and we will follow up with the training materials potentially with this audience. Thank you again, and thank you so much to our panelists and to NISTS for being such gracious hosts.
And we are super thrilled to have folks with us. So thank you again, panelists. Thanks, Tanya, and thanks team at Aspen and Community College Research Center for another wonderful resource to guide the way in our transfer work. Everyone will be sending the videos for the sessions out a little bit later today or later this week, so keep an eye out for that, and we'll follow up with additional resources as well. So thank you for being here. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. And if you're on the East Coast like me, it's time for lunch. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, PGCC team.
Thank you all so much.